Welcome back to episode 2 of the Patel perspective. I'm super excited for this opportunity to make episode 2. And I didn't really think about creating a podcast, but as weeks went by and as I got this new microphone, as I heavily was excited about in the last episode of the Patel perspective, I decided that I will post podcasts regularly. And this podcast topic is how to be an effective science student. Now, even if you are not an effective science student, you can really get a lot of value out of this podcast. In this podcast, we're going to discuss everything that you need to do so that you can be a better science student. I'm going to go into my study techniques that I used when I was in college. For perspective, I went for college for a neuroscience degree. Along with that, I also picked up minors in biology and biochemistry. And so I feel somewhat qualified to talk about my system that I kind of learned from YouTube and then kind of added my own twist. And then the results came. I ended up with a 3.9 science GPA in college, and that is because of the system that I really believed in during college. And so without further ado, let's get started with the podcast. And I guarantee that this podcast will be valuable. So the first thing we're going to really dive deeper into is kind of categorizing what type of classes you really take. And so there are two types of basic classes as a science student that you will take. And the first, basically a category, is a memorization-based category of classes, which is biology, physiology, neurobiology, or you might take a numbers-based or mathematical or technical-based classes, and those are chemistry, organic chemistry, biochemistry. So those are two types of science classes that you will really take in your college. I have my notes over here in my iPad that will really organize this podcast, and that's why I keep looking down here so that I'm on track with everything that I'm saying and everything that I'll show on this podcast. And if ever this podcast goes on Spotify, I highly recommend you to watch this on my YouTube channel, but you will also get the same value on the audio platform. And so let's just get deeper and deeper in what this system really is. And so there are two types of science classes: memorization-based science classes and technical science classes, as I said. It depends on your curriculum, and also depends on what kind of study methods and tools that you have. So I had an iPad and a Mac, and so I was in this Apple ecosystem, as the tech geeks call it. And so that really helped me, as I'll show you in my study method. If you don't have an iPad, that's fine. We'll talk about how you can work around that. If you don't have a laptop, that's also fine. This is about the system and how the system really helps you to get good grades. It's not about what you have. I'm just saying this because this is what I had. I had a laptop, I had an iPad, and so it really helped me because of this Apple ecosystem. Even if you have a notebook from Windows. I had a Windows notebook, like the digital notebook, and that also really helped me. And I used OneNote to write my notes initially in my initial college years. So this system will kind of include every sort of person, regardless if you have some equipment or not. And so let's get started into the memorization-based studying. So there are two types of memorization-based classes. The first type is a type where the PowerPoint is given from your professor. And the second type is where the professor writes the notes on the board, and then you have to physically write those notes in your notebook or iPad or whatever you have. And I feel like having a professor that writes on the board and then you convert that into your notes is harder because you have to write word to word. You have to keep up with the professor. You have to listen to what they're saying. And you also have to write down whatever they're writing. But in most classes in my undergrad, I have gotten professors that really just hand me the PowerPoint. And in both of those classes, what we're really trying to achieve is having your own notes, writing your own notes down. So in the first example, if they're giving you a PowerPoint, you're better off just writing notes on the PowerPoint. And then we're going to convert that into some questions. And that's going to be a little bit later in this podcast. If you have a professor that allows you, forces you to handwrite your notes from the lectures and not really give you PowerPoints, what you want to really do is you want to have class notes, and then you really convert them into the questions and notes later after the lecture. So that's how I would go about it. Okay, so now I really want to emphasize the idea of active recall. And active recall is basically asking yourself questions. And in whatever type of class you have, whatever type of memorization-based class you have, either they give you PowerPoint or not, you have to test yourself. You have to create your own questions. That is the holy grail of active recall. The second technique is spaced repetition. Your nervous system loves repetition. Even psychology research suggests that more you consistently, frequently test yourself, you get better at answering those questions. And those are the two techniques. This is not my idea. It is actually so many YouTubers talk about this, so many productivity YouTubers. The first YouTuber that really influenced me in thinking about studying in this way is Ali Abdaal. He's a big creator, very influential and inspirational for students in this generation, because if you really want to maximize and effectively productivize your study routine, you have to follow some sort of system. And that is where this is all coming from. So two methods, active recall and spaced repetition, you have to apply for memorization-based classes. Either they give you PowerPoint or not. Okay. Now, I'm just going to break down how you would actually go about doing this. And I'll also give you my own examples. Okay, so let's just talk about how I would, if I didn't have an iPad to do anything. Most college students right now have laptops. So let's just say I have a laptop and I have a notebook. I don't have iPad. And I'm in a class that is handwritten class. You have to write every word for word. I would write everything that I can in my possibility. And then I would go home, create questions from those notes. So what I would do is I'm just going to pull up my Notion app. And so for anyone who doesn't know Notion, Notion is a highly effective app that you can use to really drastically increase productivity while you're studying. And so I'm just going to twist the camera around, and we're going to have it's like a little split screen action going on here. And this is Notion. So now on my screen, I have Notion pulled up. I would use this app if you have a laptop. It's free. They have a free plan. You sign in with Google, and you basically get Notion for free. And so I would like to go back to when I took, maybe I won't have, oh yeah, I have molecular biology. Now, when I took molecular biology in college, I had to write notes physically, and that was really tough. So I used this app. This is from 2021, and I would have my notes on a note. I didn't use I didn't have any fancy well, I did, but I actually wrote my notes, and I would come home and then create questions. And so what I would basically, these are not coming up as questions, but maybe I have it. So, okay, so let's just treat this as, let's just treat this as a lecture, right? So I have, so these are, suppose, for example, these are my notes from the lecture. And so what I would do is I would just create questions on this. And so I would just open a new page on this, and I would just, suppose these are my notes, I would just go and click on my notes, and I would just ask me questions like, what is a replication fork? So you would just go, what toggle feature is / toggle, and so what is the replication fork, right? And so you would type in your answer. And you would create questions like this for every single important points in your notes. That is how I would go about that. And this also applies to people who have fancy equipments like iPad or Windows Notebook. This really goes for either you have fancy things or not. And then if you want to take your game like next level, if you really don't want to use any handwriting, right? This is what I would do. I would type my question, and what I would do is, let's say I have I would just get a picture of a replication fork from Google. Let's say this is Google. Okay. Take a replication fork from Google, and then you're just going to put the screenshot right underneath the toggle. And this is really productive because it cuts out like typing a lot. And you're just going to put a picture here, and you're just going to explain what the picture is. The replication fork is the site of the initiation of DNA replication. I don't even know if it's true or not. It's been like 2 years since I've taken this class. So that's how I would do that. I'll also show you some examples of my notes from previous classes that I've taken. The memory in my head is really joggy, and I actually this might be a class where I took it during COVID, so that's why I have PowerPoints somehow here. But if yeah, so these are all during COVID, I think. But yeah, what my point is, you have to make questions and after you come home from lectures, whether you have a fancy iPad or not, it does not really matter. If you have, if they give you, PowerPoint as a supplement, or basically it's if the PowerPoint is part of the lecture, what you can really do is you can take the notes on the lecture. This is a perfect example. Biochemistry. This might give you a lot of insight into what I really did. I think molecular biology one, I have to admit, was a bad example, but this is actually what I did. So she would give us, our professor, PowerPoints of lectures, and then I basically went home and I would just take that PowerPoint and put it into this question answer format, right? And so if you can see here, these are, so name all the functional groups in order of decreasing oxidation state. And so this is actually what you really want to do when you are taking a memorization-based class. My class was general biochemistry. And so, yeah, so this is what I did. So this was, I'm pretty sure this was in the PowerPoint, screenshotted it, put it under a question. And this is how I would really go about it. These are great examples of what you really want to do. Now these, I'm going to show you really how to build this up in a moment. But this is really, so this is kind of what you really want to do. Ask important questions. What are the 2 important facts about acid-base behavior of amino acids? Their ionizable groups tend to gain H under acidic conditions. And so, these are some important questions that you really want to build in your Notion app. And no one provided me with these questions, not even Google. You take your PowerPoint or you take your class notes and you convert them into questions immediately on the first day of the lecture. And that is important because you lose 50% of the information that you learn in the first day of learning. And so it doesn't really help you to not create questions. You have to create questions on the first day after the lecture, at night, or even straight after the lecture. Okay. So that is what you want to do. And that's my biochemistry class. I also want to note that I have no relationship with Notion. I am a pretty small creator. I don't have massive following. Probably have around 25 subscribers right now. And speaking of that, if you like learning about how to maximize your studying and whatever I post on social media, make sure to hit subscribe button because it's the only way to show support of this channel that's basically kind of not really popping at the moment. But this is my way of providing value. And if you like this, please hit subscribe. And so the next thing we are going to talk about is how to incorporate spaced repetition. Spaced repetition is the idea of frequently examining yourself. The more questions you answer about a particular material, the better you will be in recalling the information. And that is what we're going to talk about now. So what I want to do is I would like to take you to one of my recent courses that I have taken. So that is this one, Gap Year Notes. And then I'm gonna go to Anatomy and Physiology 2 because that is what I recently took as a prerequisite for physician assistant school. And first we took this. Okay. So this is exactly what I did. It was lecture 1.1, Principles of Chemical Communication. And it was, okay, what are the differences between endocrine and exocrine system? And you would basically create your questions and then test yourself the first day after the lecture. That's initial. Initially, that's what you want to do because you lose your information to 50% of information, as I said, after learning it. This is exactly what's on the PowerPoint. Insert it under the question, and you hide it. And so what I would basically do in this study session, in the first day of reviewing the information, I would ask myself, what are the differences between endocrine and exocrine system? Endocrine system is a hormonal system that sends signals to different parts of the body. It works through the bloodstream. Exocrine is not. Exocrine is out of the body. And sweat glands is an example. Endocrine gland is like pancreas, right? So that's how I would answer that question. Now, if I have no idea about the question, I would highlight this as red. And let's say if I got that question right, I would remove that highlight from the red. And so this here really explains what I'm trying to highlight here. Red is like 25% to none. Information recalled. Orange is medium, well, half, you don't. Yellow is, almost 75%, and then white is full understanding. So explain 4 classes of chemical messengers since it's not highlighted. That means that I had answered this fully, and you have to be really true to yourself in order to answer these questions. Now, on a side note, I have these objectives here. Those are really key. If you have objectives on your PowerPoint, you should really take a look at those and answer those questions because those are the questions that are in your short answer question of your exams. And if you're not answering these questions and you don't know anything on this objectives list, then I feel like you're missing out on a big chunk of information that you don't know on the exam. Because objectives even when I took a neuroanatomy class and he had objectives at the start of the PowerPoint. And if I'm not incorporating my objectives in this active recall system and question-based answer system, then I'm kind of really messed up on the exam day. So you don't really want to do that. You really want to know all these. And so these objective questions are really ingrained in the active recall of the questions that I'm creating from my class notes. Okay, so how would you really do the spaced repetition? So I'm going to go to my master schedule. So this is my recent stuff. I'm going to go back to back. Okay. Actually, I should just... So this is a blank space, right? So how am I going to do this? So I am going to make a study spaced repetition schedule. Let's say you had a anatomy and physiology lecture on Monday the 5th. I would go that and note that I've already created notes in Notion. So what I can do is at endocrine system, right? Because that's the name of the notes. That would really create this link. SR level 1. That means spaced repetition level. That's 1. 1 because that's the first day of reviewing that topic. Topic is anatomy and physiology 2. SR timing is the timing of the session. How long did it take to go through those questions? Status, is it completed or not? Those are the 4 things. And those 4 things would show up if I have the properties shown. Right? So SR topic, SR timing, and status shows up, right? And so if I click on it, and Monday after the lecture, I create my notes, immediately go to that link, and start answering these questions. Now, these are a lot of questions. This is really tough, and that's why this study method really shines. If you have the ability to answer all the questions, then good. It might take you 30 minutes to an hour. I have really, so the first, as you can see here, the first session took me 32 minutes to go through all the questions. But then you notice it goes down to 25 minutes, and then it goes up 55 minutes because as I recall, in that 55 minutes, or in that 30 extra minutes, I reviewed, I think, the hormones. And I made separate notes for the hormones, and that was kind of like a supplementary thing. But then in the last spaced repetition session, I came down to 15 minutes. And so my jump was 32 minutes to 15 minutes. And this is how I really know that what I'm learning is in my head, and I'm not just like just not giving enough time to the information. This SR timing is a key data for yourself. So if I go back here, right, what you want to do is you want to immediately answer those questions the first day after you have that lecture. So I had the lecture on the 5th, and then I would test myself, basically test yourself. It's basically a test that you're giving yourself. And let's say it took me, timing of the session, 30 minutes. Okay, status done. You're good. But you also want to test yourself 2 days after the lecture. And that is SR2. And then you want to test yourself a week, or actually 3 days after the lecture. So 1, 2, 3, third day, and then a week, and then the second week. Okay. And this is just like me showing you what I did in my previous study video, which I will definitely link to this podcast. At the end of the video, you will see like a card show up. The specific video really talk about this method that I use. This actually the spaced repetition schedule. And this is how I would go about it. So 1, the first session, second session, third session, fourth session in a matter of 2 weeks, right? If you want to add another session, you can really add another session. Like if you want to test yourself frequently, like you might do something like this, right? If it's really hard. If this was neuroanatomy, I would definitely do something like this, because the more you repeatedly force your brain to recall information, the better it is for you and on the exam day. So this is how I would really set it up if the lecture was really hard. Yeah, so this is a five spaced repetition session. There is no room for procrastination. Okay. By the end of this 5th study session, you will have everything learned about, for example, the endocrine system here. There's no way that this study method cannot work for you. If it worked for you, if it worked for me, I am not that smart. I think I just put in the time to really help me, and I'm not really genetically smart. I don't think I have smart genes, but I do understand that if I multiply whatever type of smartness I have by time, the results will show. So that is how you do spaced repetition. And if you are this far into the video or this podcast, technically speaking, I will link to a free template of this Notion. So you can use it right now today if you click the link on it. I highly recommend you to sign up with your Gmail account. The free plan is free again. The name of the plan is free plans. That's why. Sign up, use this template that I will post, and use this method, and you will be golden. You will really have good grades. I promise you that. And if you can't get good grades with this method, DM me on Instagram and I will help you get good grades. I have no problem with that. Okay. So that is how you do that with Notion. Now, if you don't want to use Notion, that is also completely fine. If you don't want to use Notion, that is completely fine, because let me just tell you how I would go about not using Notion. If I didn't have to use Notion, I would do flashcards, and I would create a schedule that I said stick to that schedule, make it on a piece of paper. If you're old-fashioned, you're probably, if you don't like using Notion, then you would probably want to do everything on a piece of paper. And so I highly recommend you to create a spaced repetition schedule like I showed you. Test yourself after the lecture, 3 days after the lecture, a week after the lecture, and 2 weeks after the lecture with flashcards. Just convert your regular notes into flashcards, okay? And if you really don't want to use Notion, and if you have a note-taking device like a Windows device where you can use OneNote or an iPad, this is how you would do it. Let's go down a memory lane where I took this fantastic course, which was called Cellular and Molecular Neurobiology. If this is laggy, my apologies. I will stop. Don't move. I probably, it's probably not laggy because I let it load for a day, because I opened this OneDrive thing after like probably 2 years, because I switched from Windows to iPad. But I used OneNote to write my notes when I took neurobiology. And so this is how I set it up my notes. I would write my notes or write my questions on the left side in red, and then I would go and write the answers on the right side. And this really allowed me to like zoom in on the questions, question myself, and then I would answer the question, slide to the left, look at the answer. If I got it right, good. If I didn't get it right, I would highlight it with the highlight feature. And so that's how I would do that. And so if you can see here, so this system is kind of like the Cornell note-taking system. excuse me, because the Cornell note-taking system is really similar. You have your keywords on the left side, you have the answers on the right side, and then in the bottom you have kind of a summary. You can also do that. Like you can follow any system possible that works for you, but this is what worked for me. And if you kind of like if we kind of learn from each other, like we have a really nice study system that works for 95% of college students. And so this is what I did. And so I could even draw, right? So distinguish between neurons of central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. And so this, I love this. I could draw it, and I could like kind of, if I had to answer this, like I would just say, oh, an interneuron is a connection between a connection between neurons in the central nervous system. And so that's how I would answer it. And then I would slide right and look at the answer and like really observe the answer. And you also really have to have a spaced repetition schedule so that you can frequently question yourself and answer as many questions as possible. Get better at that before exams. Okay. So that is how I would do it. I think I covered everything in the memorization-based studying. And if you think you have any questions, comment down below, DM me on Instagram, message me anywhere. I will answer those questions. Okay. And now we're going to talk about numbers-based or technical studying. Chemistry is really fun, isn't it, for students? When I was a tutor, all of the kids I tutored were from chemistry, and the chemistry was just such a pain in the butt for people. And even now, it's just a pain for people to really like understand and also like maintain a study habit. But in this podcast, we will cover that problem too. And I'll show you exactly what I did to excel in chemistry. I was really good at chemistry because I went to a private high school, and that really like kind of the material kind of just transferred over to college. It was the same material. And then I was also really good at organic chemistry. And then I was also really good at biochemistry. So let's take a look at what you need to do in chemistry. Now, generally, what you really need to do in chemistry is to do as many problems as you can. Now, people know this, but when it comes time to like put it into action, they just don't really put in that effort. You know, an ideal natural effort, in my experience, is it took me 2 hours every day to do chemistry homework. And you can't really cry about getting good grades and not really do the work. Okay. So for me, it was like 2 hours every day. I had to carry out that habit because I understood that if I just put 2 hours every day or whatever your capacity is, I would get good grades. And the system in chemistry is just similar to any math course. More problems you do, the better you will be able to do problems in the exam. And I keep going back to the exam is because exams are really what your grade is about. And you really have to just know how to take exams in order to show whoever you want to show you're good at getting grades or not. And more problems you do, the better it is. Simple equation. So I did not need to use Notion to really do the problems. Well, in fact, when I was a freshman, I would just use a notebook, pen, paper, pencil type of equipment. And this is what my study method was at that time. My memory might be a little fuzzy, but this is around what I did. My professor gave us homework problems. Like, she would just say, okay, these are all the problems about this chapter. I would go home. I would do half odd problems immediately after class, because I knew that if I didn't do immediately after class, I would lose my memory about that information. I would do half odd problems here, because odd problems have the answers in the book. You don't really want to do the even problems initially, because you're just trying to get the feel of the material and how you're trying to do those questions. And that's why I did half odd problems of that. I would alternate. So I would do 1 and I would do 5. I wouldn't do 3, because that it's kind of like that evenness that I followed. Because the other half of the odd problems, I would do some later in the week, because you have to have that balance. I would do those. So I would do those half odd problems, and I would really understand the problem. And if I had to look at the answer, I would. It's the first session of doing problems. So that's what I would do. And then the later in the week, I would do like the 3s and 7s and 10s and all of that kind of stuff, or 3s, 7s, and 11s, etc. I would highlight the difficult ones that gave you a lot of trouble. And I would highlight, and I would also know the answers. Like, I would literally, like, I would, if the answer was like 22 and I had 21 as my raw answer, I would write the actual answer beside the answer that was wrong. So this allowed me to see like how I was doing with the problems. Sometimes I would even grade myself. Okay, now the exams in my lecture course were really consistent, like meaning we would be examined frequently. So we would have like exams like every 2 weeks or 3 weeks. I can't remember, but I really remember that whenever the exam date was, I would start studying the week before that exam. So if the exam was on a Friday, I would start studying the previous Friday. And that is where I would do the half even problems. So I would do 2s and 6s and 10s, half of them. And then 3 days before the exam, I would do the other half of the even problems. So like those would be like 4s and 8s and 12s, like that sort of stuff. And so I noticed that the later end of the problems were really hard. So I would also save them for as like a studying prep for the exam, because I knew they were really hard. And I would also highlight the problems that were really difficult in that even set. And then the night before exam is really key, or the day before the exam, I would redo all the problems that were a pain in the butt. This may be 5 problems, 10 problems, 20 problems, whatever that amount is. You have to sit down and you have to do all the problems and figure out the solution for those problems. Because my professor did a weird thing after I took the first exam. Like she actually would put the same questions that were in the textbook, changing the numbers, and just put it on the exam. So I really knew that if I do more problems and get to those end problems, and if I understand and have solutions for those, I have 100 in that chemistry class, or I have like a 90, above 93 in that chemistry exam. And this may take you a few hours, as I said. This may take you a whole day too. But you have to, night before the exam, you look at your highlighted problems, you redo all those highlighted problems, And you also maybe just go over all the even easy problems, because easy problems might help you like get extra points on multiple choice questions. And again, repetition is key. You have been studying for the past 2 weeks. The more you had been studying for the past 2 weeks, the more you had been doing problems, the better your result will be on the exam day. So now what would you do for a class like organic chemistry? And we are going to go again to OneNote, because I had OneNote while I took organic chemistry, and we were going to flip through organic chemistry. MCAT. Oh, we don't want to talk about that. So this is what I did. I think organic chemistry. Yeah. So this is what I did. I think OChem 2 is probably my best grade out of the both organic chemistry classes I took. And so, okay, why is it not pop? Okay, so this is what I would do. So scroll to the left, use that Cornell system that I explained, like have your questions on the left side of the page and the answer to the right side of the page. This works with a physical notebook, but also a digital notebook. And then I would slide to the right, and then I would answer all these properties of alcohols and high blood pressure, BP. No, high boiling point. Blood pressure is medicine. High boiling point due to hydrogen bonding. And then immiscible in H2O and all. I might have just butchered the pronunciation for that. And then acidity, and then this is a different question. What are the ways to make alcohol? So I would basically answer that question, blah, blah, blah. What are the main alcohol? And it would be really helpful if you add a spaced repetition schedule to this, because organic chemistry, you have to do a lot of drawing, and you have to know the concepts too. And that's where this type of note taking shined. Yeah, so that is what I put my face in the frame. That is what I did when I took this class. And so I would just go and how I would do the problem. So I think my professor gave us a lot of exam questions to work on. So that was a plus. But this might take a lot of time loading. But as it is loading, I'll just give you what I did. I just did all the problems in the exams. I treated it the same as chemistry too. Like I would do the half-odd problem, that the system that I just explained. I would just use it for organic chemistry, because again, the more problems you do, the more drawing you do, the better it is, because you have to draw on exams too. That really was I think this is my best creative self. And it kind of sucks because I don't even know what creativity is anymore if you have gone through organic chemistry, because this is my best creative self. This is what I can draw. Three sticks and one OH. That's the best thing I could draw. And yeah, that, I don't know why is this zoomed in so in your face. But as you can see, I would just do all these problems and leave some of them for later of the week, and then before the week of one, I would always start studying before the week of the exam for these technical type classes, because that's really essential. This could also apply for biochemistry, because I know that in my college, people took higher level biochemistry than what I took. Mine was general chemistry, or general biochemistry. and that was more of like a concept based. And I knew some people who took higher level biochemistry, and so in that case, you could just use the same method here if you have to take an advanced level biochemistry. And so, yeah, this is the gist of, I think we covered everything here. We covered everything on how to get good grades and be really effective as a science student. And yeah, I think that is it. And lastly, I just want to talk about all the goals I have with the podcast. This is my second podcast. A third one might be coming really soon because I like doing these longer streamed videos because it really gives me the ability to speak freely and not under like a time constraint. So I could like go deeper into what I'm saying and I can show like evidence-based stuff basically. And yeah, if you have any ideas about podcast topics, comments, DM. It's really easy to find me on all social media platforms. And the goal of this podcast is to just help students and help people in the best way possible in whatever they're trying to pursue. We will have guests on this podcast. Yes. I am really planning out like who to invite to podcasting because this is kind of really new for me. But I really have visions of really helping people out with careers, helping people out with habits, just having conversations with different people that I can meet on social media. And so, yeah, stay tuned for that. And so if you like this video, like and share to your fellow students. The semester just started. The fall 2023 semester just started. So I hope it's not that late for this. Some of the people from my college, they haven't even started this semester yet. So I hope people watch this video somewhere around this time. It's under an hour. It's not really that bad. I feel like this will give you a lot of value in terms of studying. And I just feel like this will be really helpful because I did it. I'm not that smart, and I wasn't that smart in college. And if you think you're not that smart, same here. I use this system to basically get good grades. And there's only two things that really work. Again, asking yourself the right questions and asking those questions repeatedly and frequently. That's how you will get good grades. Thank you for watching this podcast or listening to this podcast. I hope to catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.